Hey girls, welcome back to my channel. Today's video is a little bit more on the personal side, and it's something that I've been debating for such a long time on posting, or even talking about it just brings up a lot of emotions and feelings for me. The feeling of anxiety and spiraling is something that I dealt with for such a long time, and even speaking about it brings up a lot for me, a lot of memories. As you can tell by the title of this video, we're going to be talking about how to take back control from your very anxious life and how to stop spiraling. I do want to remind you that everything that I speak about is coming from my personal experience, which is probably why it's so hard for me to do like any YouTube content idea that I have, because I like to make sure that I'm putting in my all, that I'm just speaking from experience, and I don't like talking about topics that I'm pulling out of my... Actually, let's keep it very demure, very classy, very mindful. I can't stop saying that saying, it's just so funny. So let's get straight into the topic of this video. So first and foremost, what exactly is anxiety? I have some notes on my computer, so if you see me looking towards the side, that is why. Anxiety is a feeling of fear, dread, and uneasiness. It might cause you to sweat, feel restless, feel tense, and have a very rapid heartbeat. The rapid heartbeat part is so real, but that's something we'll get into in just a bit. It can be a normal reaction to stress. For example, you might feel anxious when faced with a difficult problem at work, before taking a test, or before making an important decision. But the people with anxiety disorders, the fear is not temporary and can be very overwhelming. So you might be wondering, how did Dynasty, me, experience anxiety? I want to speak on my very first trigger, which is something that I didn't even notice was my first trigger until I looked back. But I remember that one time I was at the water park and I was with my family and friends. We were having, honestly, one of the greatest times. We're gonna be having fun, right? I remember specifically that morning I didn't eat, and it was bothering me, and it was something that was in the back of my mind. But it was only up until I was in the parking lot. It was already, let's say, 1 p.m. We had not ate. Suddenly, as I was walking to the parking lot towards the car to go eat, it was very hot. I felt myself very uneasy. I was getting like a little bit shaky. I hadn't ate, and I was under the sun, and that sun was very hot, and it was just causing me to be very stressed and overwhelmed. Also, being hungry was already something that I expressed that I was experiencing. I'm like, I'm hungry, like I don't feel well. Let's get something to eat. And they're like, okay, let's just wait like 30 more minutes. We're all about to go eat in the parking lot since we couldn't bring food from the outside. But anyways, as I'm walking towards the car in the parking lot, I have like a couple bags on me. I have an intrusive thought that comes to me and tells me I'm going to pass out. The way that thought came to me was something that I've never really experienced before. Like, yes, we've all experienced intrusive thoughts, but at that point in my life, I did not really know what an intrusive thought was. I didn't have all of the knowledge that I now have. And either way, this was something that I was experiencing for the first time, so I wouldn't blame myself for feeling or reacting the way that I did. Literally within moments, we arrived at the location where we were supposed to be, which was where the car was to get the food. I passed out. Like, I almost literally passed out. My parents grabbed me in the middle of it, and it was just a very anxious moment. My heart and my chest felt very heavy. I felt very embarrassed, especially since I was surrounded by my parents' friends as well. It was just not a good time for me, and they were like, oh, it's because you haven't ate, let's get her some food. So they gave me some food. After that, it was one of those moments that I didn't know then, but looking back now, that story was kind of the moment that is going to define the rest of how my journey went. Since we're talking about how to take control back into your life and how to stop spiraling, and I've shared one of my first triggers, which essentially was having an intrusive thought, I want you to make a list and ask yourself, what are your personal triggers? And I feel like that story that I shared was a little bit silly, like, oh my god, you really got like that because of an intrusive thought. That is something that was so hard for me to share, because I feel like a lot of people would belittle or think that it wasn't that big of a deal, but it was a big deal to me, and that is okay. It doesn't have to be a big deal to other people to make it true to yourself. So once you've identified your triggers, I want you to start acknowledging them. I feel like that was the hardest part for me, that I didn't want to accept that it was actually becoming a problem for me. I also feel like it became a much bigger problem because I didn't share it with my parents right away. It was something that, first of all, speaking to your Dominican family and telling them that you're experiencing anxiety and all of these weird thoughts that are coming to your mind that are intrusive, but they're there and I'm acknowledging them. At the time, that was probably one of the hardest things that I've ever had to do in my life. I couldn't figure out the words or how to express my feelings to them without, one, crying, and two, having a mental breakdown on how I'm gonna tell them. So on the other hand, if you do have a great relationship with your parents, I highly suggest telling them first or sharing them with a sister or with a cousin or anyone that you might feel close to that you know is going to listen and to value and respect your feelings. I feel like sharing something like that with somebody that you deeply care about is going to be very important and is also going to define a lot of the ways that you cope with this, considering that having a support system is very important. Ignoring it for such a long time and also pretending like it wasn't there actually made it a bigger problem for me. I also had two choices to pick from. Do I tell my parents and risk having them think that I'm crazy and that I don't know how I'm feeling because I'm young and that I'm getting these ideas and thoughts from the internet? Or do I ignore it and go through it on my own and make the problem even worse? Keep in mind, this option was a belief that I created on my own. These are things that I'm thinking and coming up with on my own. These are not things that they're personally telling me because, of course, I feel like you think like that and you think that your parents are going to react a certain way, and then once you tell them, it's a completely different reaction because you're telling someone that you love and that created you that you're not feeling well. Imagine how they're going to react. I feel like 9 times out of 10 they're going to be at least understanding, even if they have no idea what the hell you're talking about, but they're going to try and at least pretend. And pretending is okay, and just they don't even have to understand, they just have to be there. Anyways, moving further along, go to therapy if that is needed, especially if you can't speak to someone that's close to you that would understand what you're going through. I also want to remind you that your friends and your family members are not your therapist. Yes, they're able to hear you out, but you cannot depend on them to make you feel better. And something that I've also learned in therapy is that the therapist is not going to make me feel better. She's going to give me the tools that are needed for me to self-soothe and to help myself feel better, but she is not going to make me feel better. So don't ever put that responsibility on other people. I think I probably was the first person in my immediate family that went to therapy willingly, that actually paid for it out of pocket because they didn't take my insurance. That was crazy. But anyways, I remember that when I told my mom, she didn't really understand why I wanted to go to therapy, and I couldn't explain to her why. I just felt like I needed to. And one of the things that I appreciate about my parents is that even though they didn't understand why, they still just let me be and just let me make my own decisions, and that felt very empowering. I feel like it's something that a lot of people don't think that it's a big deal, but it was a big deal to me, and that was one of the first healing moments of my life. The fact that I did take the initiative to go to therapy, it even took me such a long time to even make that decision. So the fact that I did, looking back, I'm very proud of myself and I'm glad that I did. I learned so many different things in therapy, and my therapist was honestly really great. She was a family therapist and she really took me back to my inner child and helped me heal a lot of aspects of it. There was also a lot of triggers that I didn't know that my inner child experience that was reflecting now as a teenage girl. Well, at the moment, therapy gave me all of the tools, not to learn necessarily how to deal with it, but how to cope with it. It's something that you do learn how to cope with. It's something you do learn how to live with, but it's not something that you get over, if that makes sense. All right, so moving on from the whole therapy talk, I want you to remember that there's an entire life outside of therapy. I also feel like this is something that I forgot in the midst of me going to therapy. And you know, one of my greatest fears was, if I'm going through this right now and I'm at my worst right now, how am I gonna live and survive outside of therapy? It was one of my greatest fears, and I did not think that I was going to survive. I've also heard people say that they've been going to therapy for like 10 years and 15 years or 20 years, you know, people that are older already. But what I do wanted to point out is that, as mentioned before, there's an entire life outside of therapy, and I don't want you to feel like you have to rely on one thing or one person to cope with this. I'm an advocate for therapy all the time. While that can be true, I also believe that you can be self-sufficient and that you can learn how to self-soothe. Speaking of self-soothing, one of the ways that you're able to do that is if you're experiencing a very anxious moment or you're experiencing anything else that troubles you, I want you to grab a journal and start writing to yourself. When you journal about those feelings and then when you finish, you're gonna notice that starting from the beginning of the page, you're gonna see how you reflected from point A to point B. That is you self-soothing. That is you navigating human emotions. And as simple as it may seem, that is how we get through something. Of course, you don't learn how to do it all in one day, but you learn over time as you continue to do this habit. Another self-soothing example is that, you know, when you're walking around in your sala and you hit your pinky toe with the corner of your couch and it hurts so bad, and you know that your inner being wants to start screaming and crying and throwing a tantrum, I'm gonna be the person to tell you to do it. If it hurts, throw a tantrum. One of the things as an adult that you start to learn is, oh my god, like you can't make such big of a deal of things like that. Because as kids, when we were told this, oh my god, like you're okay, your toe is fine, you're gonna be okay. That's why I feel like as an adult, we kind of reprogram our minds and we start to think that crying like that is not okay. However, I want you to start crying. I want you to start letting it out. If you hit your pinky toe with the corner of your couch, throw the tantrum. I want you to act upon those feelings because not only are you learning how to regulate your own emotions, but I wrote this. You're also healing your inner child at the same time, which in most cases is the first person to ever experience what you're currently experiencing now. Start learning how to cry again because it's gonna help you regulate your emotions. It's gonna help you bring out those feelings to life. And it's also going to help you not to suppress those emotions, which later on come out as anxiety. This is how you teach yourself how to make yourself feel better and how you start taking back control in your life. The next time that you hurt yourself with the couch and you start crying, let me know in the comments. We're going through this together, and something that I'm currently struggling with, but I also want to make a change in my life, is routines. Create a routine for yourself and actually stick to it. Make sure that it includes a physical activity and it also includes you stepping outside of your home. I feel like one of my biggest problems, which made my anxiety so much more worse, and this also happened to me a lot during the beginning stages, I did not want to leave my house because I had a fear that what happened to me at the water park would happen to me again in another outside public setting. Going back to that moment where I was at the water park, that left me with so many feelings of embarrassment. I felt so out of control with my emotions and with my thoughts, and I literally felt that I was drowning in my own life within my own feelings. I also felt that I couldn't deal with myself outside of these four walls right here, which is crazy because I used to live here. Anyways, here are 4 practical areas of your life that you should create a routine in. You should be having a morning routine, a fitness routine, a work routine, and a bedtime routine. Out of all 4 of these, that will make or break the rest of your day is your morning routine. So let's dive in a little deeper into what the ideal morning routine would look like for us. So the number one thing that I want you to take from this portion of this video is that you have to adjust your morning routine based on your lifestyle. We often romanticize waking up at 5 a.m. or 6 a.m. just like being that girly is one of my lifelong dreams. But I also have to keep in mind that at this current moment of my life, I do not need to be waking up at the ass crack of dawn. I'm currently working from home, creating content and also pursuing my small business. That means that I'm most likely home 24/7, but even if I wake up at 8 a.m., it still gives me time to complete all of the things that I have to do. So as mentioned before, adjust the time based on the things that you need to get done. Don't feel that it has to be a 4 a.m. or a 5 a.m. or 6 a.m. routine just for it to feel successful. It is successful as long as you adjust it to your lifestyle and to your ideal routine. Okay, so after you've chosen the time that you're going to be waking up every single day, for the love of God and the universe or whatever you believe in, we have to stop getting on our phones. And I say we because this is actually a problem that I'm currently going through. It's a problem that I'm experiencing because 1, because I'm getting a fake dopamine hit. 2, I'm not letting my body to fully wake up. I feel groggy. I'm getting straight to my phone. I'm constantly scrolling as soon as I wake up. If you're really aiming for a very productive day, I'm pretty sure that that's not what's gonna give you the energy. It's a little bit of tough love, but this is what your morning ideal routine should look like. Instead of getting on our phones as soon as our eyes wake up, let's go ahead and do our little self-care routine. Let's get up, let's go to the bathroom, let's brush our teeth, let's wash our face, let's use the bathroom if needed, let's shower if you didn't shower the night before. Please make showering a priority because your hygiene is very important, especially when you're going through an anxious or depressive episode. And after you've done your little self-care routine, let's get ready for a workout, or let's go get ready to make some breakfast. Your routine in the morning will depend on what you're able to get done between the allotted time that you've chosen to wake up in. I just wanted to give you an example of what your morning routine should look like instead of going straight for your phone. Moving further along, we're going to be talking about fitness and food. People think that they need to go to the gym to start their fitness journey. My voice is getting a little bit tired, but bear with me. I personally wanted to remind you that you do have other choices in order to get started, especially if you're not 100% comfortable going to the gym. I'm one of those people, which I hate and I'm working on, but anyways. Or if you don't necessarily feel like you have the time, you can do other things such as at-home Pilates, walking, dancing, running. The choices are endless. You just have to pick what makes you feel your best and go from there. My goal for 2024 was, well, I had many goals, but as far as my fitness and my health journey, I wanted to lose 10 pounds because I was always the kind of girl to be within 112, sometimes 115 at most. I've always been kind of tiny my whole life. So when I gained weight and I went all the way up to 138 pounds, I'm definitely gonna tell you that I was shook and that it was something that made me feel very uncomfortable. December was when I started my fitness health journey. I'm like, okay, if I want to make a goal to myself to lose 10 pounds in 2024, why do I have to wait for the new year to start when I could just start right now? So that's exactly what I did. Mine was a little bit extreme and I got very inspired by Haley Gamble. So Like I said, my journey was probably a little bit extreme in how I lost it, etc, etc. However, it was done with tough love. It became so easy as soon as I mastered my routine for everything else in my life. I'm thinking about making a separate video on how I went about my weight loss journey, my mindset shifts that I went through during that time, and just how my mentality and body changed over time. Let me know in the comments if you're interested in a video like that. However, what I do want you to take from this video is to cut out caffeine from your routine, include more veggies, and I'm not even going to say to cook more from home because I feel like a lot of people don't really prioritize that, and I'm not going to force it upon you. But every time that you do eat out, I want you to be a little bit more mindful. Start to opt in for something much healthier every single time. Like I said, adjust this advice according to your lifestyle. Lastly, girls, I want you to remember that you were put on this earth for a reason. And I feel like me having that anxious moment and me having that panic attack for the first time in the water park, that was one of the very first moments that I actually paid attention to my thoughts, that I actually paid attention to my feelings. If it wasn't for that moment, it would have taken me a long time to wake up. Of course, the panic attacks and the anxiety is what led me to spiral, considering that it also led me to hyper focus on a lot of little things. However, going back to the point that I was making, if you've ever experienced anything like how I described, you know that you start to question reality a lot, and maybe life had this happen for you to learn how to stop being on autopilot. You can heal and learn how to take control back into your life if you have not changed yourself. One of the ways that you can start making a change in your identity is to stop attaching anxiety to it. One of the things that my therapist told me that stopped me in my tracks was, why are you always saying that you're such an anxious person? I was like, ooh. She told me that as long as I continue saying that I'm such an anxious person and that I continue introducing myself in that way, that's exactly who I'm going to be. However, if you start making the change and you start thinking to yourself instead, I'm not an anxious person, I'm just experiencing an anxious moment. That saying is slightly different, but it makes the biggest difference, especially when it comes to changing your identity. Anxiety is not all of me, it's just a little tiny portion of me. And that is how you start making the change, because how you speak to yourself matters. Another thing that I wanted to remind you while you're in your healing girl era is that yes, you're having an anxious moment, but you're also learning how to deal with it on your own and learning how to let it just be. Another example that I wrote down about many things being true at once is that you may not have all the answers on how to build your dream life, but you're also learning how to trust in the unknown, and that is completely fine. I remember that during the beginning of my journey, I felt so alone and I couldn't really find anyone who resonated with the things that I was experiencing at the time. Looking back now, I'm very proud of my growth, and I'm also very proud of the person that I am today. At the same time that I'm reflecting, if I would have experienced the loss of my brother 4 years ago while I was experiencing this at the same time, a lot of you may not know obviously, but I did lose my 16-year-old brother last year in 2023. I don't think 2019 me would have learned how to survive that chapter of my life, and that's why accepting that everything happens in your life for a reason is so real. And that is exactly why I created my channel, because I want to talk a little bit more about topics like these that are so hard to actually speak about in person. And if you are feeling at your worst right now, just know that there are so many better days ahead. Please let me know in the comments what you resonated the most with in this video. And don't forget to subscribe for more videos like these. Mwah. Bye!